Okay, hello everyone and welcome. I'm Tony Myers, editor and founder of Cocoa Radar. I hope I don't get lost too much in this lovely forest background, which I think is a cocoa forest in Colombia that I visited. But anyway, I'm delighted to be your host for this session in Pictera's Sustainability Verification Series, the second one, I think. Yeah, the second conversation. So the first focused on verifying deforestation-free sourcing, and today we turn to regenerative agriculture and the shift from ambition to measurable proof. Across cocoa, coffee, dairy, grains, and other agricultural systems, regenerative practices are becoming central to supply resilience, climate response, and farmer livelihoods. However, real progress now depends on credible evidence that practices are being adopted and that they have an impact on the ground. It's very important. That is where standards, incentives, and technology need to work together. Okay, so I am joined today, I'm pleased to say, by two excellent guests who are at the forefront of this work. First of all, I'll introduce Carlotta Costa, currently Director of ESG at Dimitra, a leading ag tech service provider with mobile apps for smallholder farming, as well as ESG compliance platforms for corporate and established players in the agri-food industry. She has a background in ESG compliance for EU importers and farm-level experience, enabling EUDR compliance for cocoa, particularly in Latin America, which is interesting. We also are joined by Luke Hopkins. He leads a customer service team at Pictera, a GRI platform and solutions provider, helping to drive sustainability throughout global supply chain. He has a background in GIS applications across the commercial and government sectors. So, Carlotta, Luke, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Tony.
Right, we've got about 20 minutes. This is a live kind of fireside chat format, so we're not in a webinar mode. So it's a 20-minute discussion just between the three of us. So we've got a lot to kind of unpack. So let's start with today's topic, as we said, and it's really why regen ag needs proof. And I'd like to emphasize for my speakers, my guests, let's emphasize scale, trust, and business alignment as we move forward. So Carlotta, let's start with you. We are seeing major food and agri-commodity companies scale regenerative programs across millions of acres. There's Pepsi, there's ADM, there's McDonald's, and others are expanding investment because they see environmental and economic value in resilient farming systems. Now, based on your work in cocoa and other supply chains, what is driving the shift toward measurable regeneration, and why is verification so central now?
Thank you, Tony. You are perfectly right. Momentum around regenerative agriculture is very real, and I would say for a good reason. It has become a core strategy for companies seeking to secure long-term supply chains, as well as supporting farmers, and ultimately to mitigate climate and nature-related risks. But I must say that ambition alone is no longer enough. We are now in a phase where credibility matters as much as commitment does, and at its core, there are farmers. So at Dimitra, we actually help farmers access the knowledge necessary for the transition while explaining to them the benefits that they will enjoy with such a change. The train the trainer model that we deploy mitigates the literacy and connectivity issues that affect the adoption of tools that could assist them. So, what we actually observe in the field is that farmers are actually willing to adopt regenerative practices, but they require confidence and support during the transition period. That means ultimately that financial incentives, technical knowledge, and most importantly, trust are at the core of this transition. Trust, I would say, is what they're doing, or trust, can I say that is very important for recognize and reward their efforts ultimately. Verification, in our case, can create that trust. When practices and outcomes become measurable, we can offer better incentives, attract financing, and scale adoption across entire regions. So, in the Mikakao initiative, for instance, that I led a few years ago, traceability and verifiable ESG data helped thousands of smallholder cocoa farmers in Peru and Colombia to demonstrate the value of their produce in the market and then access new opportunities in those markets. So I would say ultimately verification is not simply a reporting exercise. It is a transition enabler, a confidence mechanism for farmers and buyers, and ultimately a foundation for more resilient supply chains worldwide.
Okay, thank you, Carlotta. And I'd just like to remind viewers as well that a phrase that I've often heard many, many times now, and it still holds great value, is transparency is the currency of trust, isn't it? That is in sustainability across the supply chains. Without that, then we have nothing. Okay, but thank you for those insights, Luke. So from Pictera's perspective, what are you hearing from sustainability and sourcing leaders? We'd be interested to know, how is GeoAI turning ambition into measurable progress? By this, I mean many organizations are no longer satisfied with pilots or baseline studies. They want healthier soils, more diverse systems, and long-term supply resilience. They aim to achieve this in a way that reduces both the cost and time required for verification. How is GeoAI enabling that shift from ambition to measurable progress, is my question to you.
Yeah, so exactly what you mentioned, Tony. So companies, they don't want these regen agri practices to remain to a small number of showcase farms. They want it to be scalable, repeatable, and economically sound as well, kind of across the entire region and sourcing network that they own. And it's really becoming a business strategy for both resilience and supply security, as much as it is about the climate and sustainability goals. So a few weeks ago, I was at the recent World Coffee Innovation Summit, and many of the panelists there were agreeing that regulations like EUDR are forcing them to become more data-centric in their supply chains. And while that's specifically focused on deforestation, it's actually pushing everyone to get their data in order. It's forcing them to align on different standards and collaborate more closely across the farmers, the federations, and the governments as well. And I think that connects directly back to the regenerative agriculture side. And to kind of come on to the GeoAI part, utilizing that and satellite imagery, we can monitor field level indicators such as vegetation cover, shade trees, hedgerows, crop diversity, or even soil moisture, things like that. So it allows us to do that over potentially thousands of plots in near real time. And that provides companies with the consistent view of what is happening on the ground without relying solely on those field visits or self-reported data. And the real power of GeoAI in this world is the scale and repeatability of it. You can really see the progress of these practices unfolding and identifying where perhaps they're taking hold in the most kind of effective ways, but also where farmers might need a bit more support as well. And I think it shifts the narrative from the compliance side to really that shared visibility and collaboration and transparency that you mentioned. And I think companies can direct resources where they're most effective, essentially. So they're measuring this improvement over time and kind of feeding that back and giving credit to the farmers who are genuinely advancing these regen practices. So I think overall, regenerative agriculture, it's becoming something that can be measured, improved, and scaled as well. And GeoAI helps turn that positive intent into demonstrable progress, providing everyone across the supply network with a unified view of what is working and where to focus next.
Okay, thank you, and maybe Carlotta might pick up on this, but there was a huge big summit in Amsterdam earlier this year on regenerative agriculture, which covered a lot of grounds. But I think what we can get from that is Geo AI is the default verification backbone, isn't it? It's satellite machine learning monitoring that will provide continuous region scale signals, vegetation cover, shade, hedge grows, moisture to complement field visits. Basically, that's what we're kind of talking about here, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so thank you for that, Luke. Okay, let's move on to let's look at incentives and farmer experience, and that word again, trust. A reoccurring theme in this space is that verification should not become a burden. We all know about the farmers that are struggling as it is. Farmers should not spend hours collecting data to prove they are doing the right thing, and companies do not want to rely solely on declarations or fragmented reporting. That's very important. So, Carlos, it's good to have you here because you have worked directly with producers, cooperatives, and supply chain actors in the field. So, my question really is: how can verification support, not burden, farmers?
Well, that is a very important point, Tony. So thanks for raising that up. For regenerative agriculture to scale, we know that verification has to be designed in a way that works for farmers. So for this reason, I actually appreciate spending my time with producers, often on their own fields, to test out the products that we have with firsthand experience. And in all of it, I believe that verification should bring about value back to the farmers, either by securing premium markets or simply by remaining competitive. And digitization can greatly help with both of those objectives. In the end, they should build confidence, not policing. Most farmers already know what good practices look like, to be honest. I'm pretty sure most of the attendees of this conversation will agree with this statement. They know the quality of their soil, they have intergenerational knowledge on how factors have been affecting their land, and they grasp ultimately what resilience means in their day-to-day lives. What they often lack is the ability to evidence the progress in a format that buyers and regulators trust. So, what we have seen in this case, in terms of innovation context, I could give an example. I was at the World Food Forum hackathon that we joined and won at FAO a few weeks ago. We actually ideated a field advisor, so an AI-powered voice bot that supports farmers by chatting and capturing value, thus not creating extra admin work for them. The goal is not to turn farmers into data collectors. It is to create systems that can automate proof and translate it into value. That means making verification consistent and straightforward, providing clear feedback loops instead of having one-way reporting, and then ensuring that verified progress opens access to finance or incentives while giving farmers visibility into how their data is used and why it matters. In my experience, honestly, when farmers see that data is used to support them, they engage more and adopt programs faster. So, in programs that I could lead in the past, transparency and traceability, for instance, have helped farmers demonstrate their sustainability performance and eventually improve their market position. So, in this way, I saw how digitized verification really becomes a pathway to opportunity, not another administrative requirement, right?
Okay, well, thank you. And again, there's something there you just mentioned that farmers are not data collectors, and there's an open question moving on, not particularly for this conversation, but it's about equity and inclusion, isn't it? How do we ensure smallholders with limited connectivity or literacy are fully included in verification systems? Isn't it? I mean, that's an open question as this debate, the wider debate moves on, I think, if it's going to have a real impact on regenerative agriculture. Okay, thank you, Carlotta. Luke, let's build on that. And my question really for you boils down to how does data strengthen farmer buyer collaboration. One thing that emerged strongly in the last session, Tara, is that when suppliers see value in the data, relationships strengthen. It becomes collaboration, not compliance. How do you see that playing out in regenerative agriculture programs?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest shifts we're seeing is the move from just being a compliance check to this continuous enablement. And the focus is not only proving that farmers are doing the right things, but it's also helping them to succeed along the way. And we're utilizing GeoAI verification, it runs in the background. So farmers don't need to spend time on documenting their practices or uploading reports. The satellite imagery and machine learning can help monitor the vegetation cover or the shade trees or the hedgerows and general kind of overall landscape as well. So this really highlights where the regenerative practices are taking root, and where more support might help as well. And being realistic and perhaps slightly cynical, at the corporate level, these decisions are driven by business priorities and revenue, but the same can be said for the farmers as well. These practices, they only scale if it creates kind of real value for the producers themselves. And that could be through incentives or improved productivity or access to preferred markets. And again, data plays a role here, because when progress is visible and trusted and transparent, the reward structures become fairer and farmers feel more supported rather than being scrutinized as well. And we personally see this in practice with customers who are monitoring agroforestry across entire regions, instead of just checking sort of random farms to build out their knowledge. And this allows them to monitor thousands of plots and build programs around real progress as well. It also helps them to save time. It reduces the verification cost, and most importantly, builds that trust. And when the farmers see that support is based on what is actually happening on their land, and companies feel confident scaling regenerative programs responsibly, then you get that sort of mutual understanding and mutual kind of working together. And I think in that sense, verification as a whole, it shouldn't be treated as a hurdle. It should be treated as the foundation for collaboration and shared success.
So, okay, yeah, thank you. I'm just picking up a couple of things there. You know, we're talking at the corporate level, the business alignment that we mentioned earlier, and I think again, not a question for our conversation here. We're on a tight schedule, but open question. Moving on is a proof to profit timeline of what time frame can companies expect verified regenerative practices to deliver measurable business value. I'm sure that's what they will be looking at as well from that at that corporate level. Okay, so I think we'll move on now to that moves on too nicely to the business case and resilience. We've unpacked quite a lot of information. Let's connect back to the business case. Major companies like the ones we mentioned earlier, PepsiCo, ADM, McDonald's, have been clear that regenerative agriculture only scales when it improves resilience and profitability, not just climate metrics. Farmers need a viable business model, and companies need a predictable supply and risk reduction. So, Carlotta, my question to you: how do you think how are organizations evaluating the return to regenerative investment today?
Well, I trust that the conversation has shifted. So regenerative agriculture is no longer framed only as a sustainability initiative. It is increasingly recognized as a key component of risk management and value creation. To my knowledge, this has been a consistent message at international talks, like during the Regenerative Agriculture Summit in Amsterdam earlier this year, that you mentioned as well. There, leaders were clear that regeneration is not necessarily something nice to have. It's actually a strategic lever for supply resilience, not just a climate commitment, as many framed it up to now. They talked about economic durability, securing raw materials, and ultimately protecting farmer networks in a changing climate. Finally, what I particularly appreciated at the event is that the cost of inaction was framed as higher than the cost of transition. This is because now companies look at regeneration through lenses like supply security. So we talk about healthy soil or diversified systems that reduce vulnerability to climate shocks and input volatility. Then we can go into regulatory and stakeholders' confidence, another of these lenses. Whether it is CSRD or EUDR or any voluntary commitments, organizations need traceable proof of environmental improvement to ensure market access and build credibility. And lastly, the cost and productivity over time is another lens through which decisions are being made nowadays. So, for instance, farmers in that regard who adopt regenerative practices often experience reduced input costs as well as more stable yields. So, I guess then the challenge that really is benefits tend to accumulate over time, whereas the costs nowadays are upfront or appear to be upfront. So businesses need trusted data to measure progress, manage risk exposure, and allocate resources effectively. This is why we see such an interest in technology and traceability systems recently. And I think that that is because they give confidence to both sides of the value chain. On the one side, you would have companies that can justify their investments. And then on the other side, you have farmers that can demonstrate progress and secure support.
Thank you, Carlotta. Again, more questions are coming out of that, which we don't have time. We are nearly out of time actually at the moment. So, but incentive mechanisms, what financial or non-financial rewards most effectively drive regenerative adoption, and how are they funded at scale? I think that's a question that we need to kind of address at some stage in the future. Luke, moving on, again on this topic, how does GeoAI tie the environment, land health, for example, to the business value?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we see as a business and what we consistently hear from sustainability and sourcing leaders is that regenerative agriculture only scales if it makes business sense. So I think it's no longer just about meeting climate commitments. It's about protecting supply chains. It's about reducing their exposure to volatility and really building a resilience into the sourcing systems themselves. So again, this was kind of a key theme at the event that I was at. The panelists and the execs that were there were clear that you cannot expect farmers to change unless there's a clear incentive and confidence that that effort will pay off for them as well. But the same applies to the businesses. They require that credible data to justify the investment and demonstrate progress to regulators, to investors, and internal teams that manage that financial risk. And I think this is kind of where GeoAI comes in, because timing can play a significant role in determining value as well. And GeoAI provides that early visibility. If certain plots are under stress or uptake is uneven, or teams can get that agronomic support where it will make the biggest difference. So you see where the incentives are working, where more engagement is needed, and where the farmer programs themselves are delivering that measurable impact. And that saves cost and increases confidence in resource allocation as well. Just to bring a practical example from the work that one of our work is in a coffee producing region where a buyer is rewarding farmers who adopt regen agri practices, such as growing hedgerows for wind buffering or cover crops or shade trees. And they do this because these practices improve the actual bean quality and also the long-term supply reliability. So we support this using GeoAI by monitoring these farming plots, by doing it at scale, which really helps ensure that producers are rewarded fairly, and the progress can kind of continues from both fronts. And I think to kind of tie back to your question, when you connect the land health, the farmer incentives, and supply stability with consistent data, regen agri really stops being viewed as a cost, and it becomes more of a strategic advantage and a smarter way to secure that future supply as well.
Okay, thank you, Luke. Okay, we are just almost at the end now. I've got a final question for our two guests, but I'd just like to mention as well, there's a handy QR code in the corner there on your screen. You can follow up with Pictera for a consultation on many of these topics that we've raised, and also Carlotta will be available with Dimitra to follow up as well. So please, and also please follow up with Cocoa Radar. We cover this quite a lot in our newsletter. So sign up for the newsletter if you haven't already. That's my little plug. Okay, one final thought for our two guests. What gives you confidence that Regen AG can scale with credibility? So that's my final question. Carlotta, kick us off there.
I guess what really gives me confidence is momentum and partnership. In this regard, I'm personally committed to building technical solutions that can scale positive impact throughout agri-food supply chains by enabling knowledge sharing, enhancing verifiability, and progress tracking, as well as reporting. We see farmers, companies, standard bodies, and more actors throughout agri-food supply chains that are actually getting aligned in a way that we have not really seen before. So there seems to be a shared understanding that regeneration must go hand in hand with resilience and farmer livelihoods. So clear standards, strong incentives, and trusted data are what make this real. When farmers can really demonstrate progress and companies can verify outcomes, everybody benefits, right? It's a win-win. And that is how regeneration becomes the new normal, in my opinion, and not a niche initiative anymore.
Great.
What about you, Luke?
That's a fantastic summing up there. Luke, what's your final thoughts on this topic today?
Yeah, I mean, fully agree with what you just said, Carlotta. And for me, the confidence comes from the fact that the evidence is starting to catch up with the ambition. And with the continuous monitoring, we can now see progress in near real time. And we can observe whether practices are gaining traction, where farmers may require support, and how these changes actually enhance the yield stability and resilience over time as well. And I think this is not only a technical shift, but it's also a cultural one as well. I think the Regen Agri is being treated as a core business and supply strategy, not just a sustainability commitment. And what excites me most is that kind of GeoAI can connect what is happening on the land with the decisions that are being made in the boardrooms as well. And as we've mentioned a few times today, when that progress is visible and trusted, Regen Agri can scale naturally because it creates value for everyone involved.
Great. Okay. Well, we have sadly come to the end. I mean, this is again another fascinating subject. It's something that's it's come to the fore in the last couple of years. I know people have been involved in this field a lot longer, but it's certainly gaining traction with the sustainability communities, particularly in the cocoa area industry that I work in. But I'd like to say thank you, Luke and Carlotta, for this excellent discussion, and to everyone who has joined us today. The message is clear. Regenerative agriculture is moving from ambition to proof. Companies want to invest with confidence, and farmers want to be recognized for real progress. Credible verification is the bridge that connects them. GeoAI is helping make regeneration visible, measurable, and scalable. As I mentioned before, if you'd like to explore more on how GeoAI can support your regenerative programs, please comment consultation below or scan the QR code on the screen to request a session with the Pictera team. So for me, it's goodbye. Have a great day wherever you are, and thank you to my two guests.
Thank you for listening, audience, and thank you so much, Tony, for moderating this. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. Thank you, Carlotta.